Imagine trying to change an industry that has not shifted in 100 years. This is exactly what today's guest set out to do. He looked at foam cups, plastic packaging, and tree-based products and said, we can do better. And for almost 4 decades, he has been proving that sustainability is not a trend, it's a system that can replace the waste we no longer need. We're going to be talking to the CEO of Emerald Ecovations, Ralph Bianculli, about all of his evolution in this business and the communication and education he provides his clients with on a daily basis. We're going to talk about that all in today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, marine biologist and science communicator. I'm here to let you know what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. The How to Protect the Ocean podcast is part of a podcast network called the Speak Up for Blue Network, where we podcast with purpose. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about business for purpose with sustainability. Ralph Bianculli is the CEO of Emerald Ecovations, and he's here to talk about his evolution of starting this company and growing it at big scales. Like we're talking like millions of products in large corporations' hands to be able to not only feel good about the products they use, but also know that it is sustainable. And we're going to be talking about that. Speaking of sustainability, of treeless bait or tree-free products, we know trees are important, but we know seagrasses are even more important because they can sequester up to 10 times more carbon dioxide than trees, like forests and so forth. And so we need seagrass meadows, but to be able to need seagrass meadows, just like we're going to be talking about in this episode of communicating how many trees a product can save, we're going to be talking about the seagrasses and how much they benefit our ocean, what science, conservation, and restoration projects are out there on the Seagrass Effect podcast, and we want to launch it, but we need your help. If you want to join the crowdfunding project to help launch this podcast, all you have to do is go to speakupforblue.com/seagrass. That's speakupforblue.com/seagrass. It's about time that we talk and educate ourselves about seagrass meadows and their importance to not only us for climate change and sequestering carbon dioxide, but also for cleaning up bays, making sure our coastal communities are biodiverse, and making sure that they protect us from wave energy and so forth. It's going to be really great. All you have to do is go to speakupforblue.com/seagrass to check it out and donate to the campaign. When you donate to the campaign, a portion of that donation goes towards restoring a seagrass project that we're going to be documenting through the podcast. So go to speakupforblue.com/seagrass and help restore a seagrass meadow today. All right, let's get back into it. This is something that I feel like is really important because we talk a lot about businesses that are in the startup phase. This business is well beyond the startup phase, and it's in action. It's selling, it's scaling, it's great. And Ralph is on the podcast today to talk about not only like the products that he sells and how the company is focused on sustainable, tree-free, compostable alternatives to traditional paper and plastic products, but he's here to talk about the education that he provides on a regular basis, not just to new prospects, right? Potential customers, but even the customers that he has now, to let them know how much they are doing for the environment just by buying these alternative products. That's what's great. Imagine being able to say, hey, just by buying these products, we've saved 8,000 trees. That's the level of scale that we're talking about here. And it's large corporations. Ralph also talks about how it's difficult to change the behaviors of legacy corporations that are not ready to change just yet. However, he is not going to stop in trying to get them to change. I think having somebody like this, like Ralph on the podcast, to be able to perpetuate this message and to say, hey, you know what? There are businesses out there that are working at scale that are really changing the world. And we don't know about these all the time. And he's there to not only communicate to his customers, but also to communicate to the world what he's trying to do and how important it is for our world to be able to accommodate this and adapt of these types of products at scale. I think that's great because a lot of the times when we look at things, we look at a lot of new companies that are in fashion or that are in like products such as these. They're all in the startup phase and they're trying to get going and trying to get going. We're looking at a company that deals with large corporations that are buying at scale. They're buying millions and millions of products. And I think this is something that we need to hear more about. So I was really happy to have Ralph on the podcast. So without further ado, here is the interview with Ralph Bianculli, CEO and founder of Emerald Ecovations, talking about a company focused on sustainable, tree-free, and compostable alternatives to traditional paper and plastic products. Enjoy the interview, and we will talk to you after. Hey, Ralph, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about all things sustainability and business?
Well, thanks for having me here, Andrew, and absolutely ready to roll.
All right, I'm looking forward to this. I don't get to have a lot of business people on, people who own businesses, entrepreneurs who own businesses that are very based in sustainability. And Ecovations is a business that is based around sustainability. So I can't wait to dive in, like why you started it back when you did in like 1997, how you've grown it, the evolution of the business, all this kind of stuff I'm looking forward to getting into. But before we do that, Ralph, why don't I just ask you who you are and what you do?
Okay. Well, true blue plastics and paper individual that's been in the business for almost 4 decades. Um,
Wow.
Much of what I've done over the years is work to help companies not only move forward in their business endeavors, but looked at how things that we do every day, particularly in the business industries we're in, paper and plastics is like on the top of the charts when we talk about sustainability.
Yeah.
So it's been a great ride over the last 3.5, 4 decades. Uh, but mostly what I am most interested in is changing an industry that hasn't changed in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds easy, but it is a challenge. And fortunately, I surround myself with some very intelligent people, and we've done some great things over the last few years.
That's awesome. So take me back to 1997 when this vision of like reducing waste and everything started. Where were you at in life in general and in business, and how did this vision start? And like where did it come from?
Well, my first real job was in operations, and I ran food operations for a large enterprise back in the late 80s into the 90s. I then decided to spin off into the supply side. I saw opportunities where, in the business world, what we were in food service, consuming enormous amount of products in disposables, when
Mm-hmm.
disposables wasn't a bad word back then.
Right,
Um,
right.
and interesting enough, I decided to get into the supply side to see if I can change that dynamic. And it didn't happen overnight, quite honestly. But in the late '90s, I was spun off one of our business groups, which is in general distribution and supplies, mostly food service disposables, packaging materials. All back then, when, if there's a younger audience, may or may not remember the days of the foam products, but foam
Yes.
products dominated the world. And
Yes.
what I recognized was that these foam products were a problem, and I realized that back in the '90s, and decided to spin off a business group from Georgia Pacific back then, and started what ultimately is what we have today. But it's been a long road, um, and again, the changes that have evolved, quite honestly, have become much more apparent in the last 3 to 4 years than they
Mm-hmm.
have in the last 30 years. But our objective is to change the consumer habits, and to do that, it takes a lot of education, which we lead with in our business.
So is Emerald Ecovations a B2B or a B2C type of company, or a little bit of
Well,
both?
we are a B2B business,
Okay.
and what we do is we sell our materials, which is the finished goods. We
Yeah.
make over 370 finished goods in
Wow.
our alternative technology, which is uh, actually it's a fiber material that is utilized to make our finished goods. That technology has evolved over the last 10 years for
Yeah.
us personally. Uh, so we do sell to large business footprints, and the reason we do that is because we recognize it takes consumption in volume to really move the needle in what
Mm-hmm.
we're all fighting for, how to save our planet, not only the oceans, but the forest and so on. So
Yeah.
uh, we spent a lot of time in the big business enterprises, and today we have some of the largest corporations utilizing our material. Contrary to what we may hear, companies are certainly interested in changing their habits with materials that aren't performing properly for the environment. And quite honestly, it's the younger generation that's moving that needle. We're
Hmm.
seeing that acceleration in the last few years, where the decision makers are now in their late 20s, early 30s,
Yeah.
who actually are very engaged in what is a highly consumable essential, right? Every time you go out to a takeout place or when you're utilizing stuff at home, whether it's a towel, a tissue products, these are everyday essentials. But it's going to take continued education in order for us to uh, make sure the consumer understands. So large enterprises, we get the biggest impact. We're touching about
Yeah.
1.4 million consumers a day with our products. So certainly that impact is being realized with some of the tool sets that we provide our clients.
That's amazing. You mentioned, talking about like behavior changes. Like it's kind of interesting when you talk B2B, you're talking corporations. So you're probably talking to people who are purchasing your products, one or two people, maybe a team of people that are engaged with you and your sales team to engage with those products. Is the education have to be to that team that you're selling to, or the entire corporation, or the leadership of that corporation? And I'll go on just to add to that. How are you being able to sort of penetrate that market with your products compared to, plastics and so forth?
That's a great question, Andrew, and it really is. And there's probably 10 answers to that question, but let me sum it up as best I can. Yes, the answer is we do present our platform to what we call C-level decision makers in companies. They are the individuals who can break the barriers that are built into the supply chain today. Many legacy companies today have been around for 100 plus years.
Yeah.
Um, they're not changing their habits. They're still going to continue using petrochemicals.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going to be using toxins in their towel and tissue materials. It's just part of the business model that they've built. So these decision makers are not, unfortunately, are not those day-to-day purchasing agents, which are important in the
Mm-hmm.
equation. But
Mm-hmm.
once they bring in the C levels, they better understand why it's very important to change the habits of what is a very traditional old legacy supply chain.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be uh, frustrating at the same time as innovative when you start to bring these products to people. What is the people who do decide to go with you? What is the reason are they going? Is it like a price point that they're going for, and like they don't really care about the sustainability as long as it works well and everything like that? Because I know some companies like, look, as long as the product is working and it's good for them and the price is there, then it'll work with you, and it's just a matter of your sales magic to kind of get them over the hump. Or do they actually care about sustainability? You mentioned like some of the younger decision makers, they actually care about sustainability and they're very engaged in it. Like, is it a little bit of a balance, or is that how it started out, where it's just like price point, it works, let's go with it, and then of course the magic of the salesperson? Or is it like a little bit of like, no, we're engaged and we want to see more sustainability because it's part of our vision as a corporation?
I don't want to get too complex in what our business model really does deliver to the clients, but I will give you the highlights because those are very, very good points. We're not just a green product, and there are a lot
Right.
of folks out there that say I'm using a green product. Um, but when they actually challenge that supply chain of what that green product is, where does it come from, what is it made from, where does it go, they never get a clear answer. It's borderline greenwashing to
Mm-hmm.
many, many, many degrees. That's something that I've been very adamant about in our company. Is our business model is not only built on what is the finished product, it's but where did that product come from?
Yeah.
We're aggregators of the raw material. And because we control the raw materials in these highly renewable fibers that we aggregate across the world, in fact, we just built a plant in Arkansas that's generating 5 tons of miscanthus, which is one of the fiber products we use in our fiber food service packaging. The point is, we take it from the inception, raw material. We control the entire fabrication of that material to finished goods. And because we do that, we are able to actually measure the impacts that our clients are rewarded with when it comes to how many trees are saved, how much water is saved, how much carbon reduction, because we control the metrics of the materials. And that separates us clearly across every other kind of green product that's out there. But we're very proud to be the only tree-free producer of paper in the USA today.
It's
We're
amazing.
advancing a technology that is really at a very early stage. But your listeners and your whole concept in the oceans plays a huge role in this, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
a direct reflection. There's two largest sequesters of carbon. The ocean is one of them. The second
Hmm.
is forest.
Yes.
Um, so we are very, very in tune to why do we cut trees down to make coffee cups? Why do we cut trees down to make
Right.
toilet tissue? And no one could
Right.
give us an answer. So we took it to the next level. So we do not cut trees down. Our water consumptions in the fibers are measured. They represent about 12 to 15% of what actually is being used in most other kind of products, particularly
Hmm.
resin-based products. So we're significantly less than water. Our renewable fibers are harvested sometimes twice a year, unlike trees, which need 30 years to grow
Hmm.
with a lot of water.
Yeah.
um, Cutting those trees down is uh, represents about 18% of the sequestered carbon on the planet.
Yeah.
And we all know from basic elementary school, trees give off oxygen and take in
Hmm.
carbon. Um,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of other reasons as we get into what we do as a company. We really are consultants in the space
Hmm.
because soil erosion is a big issue in this country. Um, we're losing somewhere between 1.4 and 1.5 billion tons of organic soil a year. How does
Hmm.
that get replaced? Particularly if you're cutting forest and clearing, you get runoff, and there's a lot of issues that we're addressing as a company that I think messaging your types of listeners and messaging the business world is necessary, and part of that is the education.
I love that. And the education is huge. Like when you present it to someone who's about to buy from you, or like a prospective client, what type are you talking about? Soil erosion? Are you talking about the importance of trees? Are you talking about how other suppliers might be using products made from trees, plastics, and so forth? Is that the type of education that you're providing to the prospective client?
Yes, and in fact, we do that every day. It is all part of the reason in the business world we're talking to C-level decision makers because they understand the magic of being able to not only utilize materials like this that are very innovative, but be able to be proud of the results they're getting. The metric reports that we offer our clients are being used in shareholder letters, are being used to promote to their stakeholders across all their business channels. Um, those metrics are important, and that is the difference between what we do as a company. But education is widespread, and we have some very, very robust platforms. We have an actual academy, which we have now close to 3,000 graduates that are industry graduates, not a traditional consumer, but folks who are actually making decisions in the corporate world or those in the supply chain that actually sell our materials. That is the Emerald Sustainability Academy. That is very active. We
Yeah.
also have a podcast, which we just did recently. So we are communicating
Yeah.
as best we can in a
Of course.
very loud, noisy world. So it's organizations and podcasts like yours, Andrew, that needs to spread the facts of what
Yeah.
the difference is in environmentalists.
Well, I completely agree with you. I like how you're constantly providing different ways that people can communicate, or people could listen to the communication and the education that you provide, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's an email, whether it's in your business pamphlets and so forth, digital, and you sending it over to customers and clients. Because I mean, that's what it's really a thing. Like people need to be educated on the importance, on the urgency to go towards these products and start using these products. And I just love the scale that you're doing it at. with large corporations that would traditionally buy sort of the regular products that we would get that are wasteful and bad for the environment, tenfold, right? When you look at this, probably even more. So I really think that's an interesting thing. When did you find that you were really, making a dent in the market? Like, because it's got to be a difficult thing to get in, educating people, because people are like, well, this is just regular day stuff that we use. Why do we need to do something different? When did you really find that you were making that dent and getting people to listen and understand like the importance of using products like yours?
What's interesting stat is 10 years ago, 3% of the actual decision makers, consumers, um, represented what we would today say is a tree hugger, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you fast forward a decade, and it still hasn't moved the needle that much, right? Tree huggers are still less than 10%, right? It's about
Right.
9%.
Right.
So we don't need to focus on the tree hugger because they're committed, right? When they
Of
hear
course.
about what we're doing, they're all in. Um, but it's the other 91, 92% that needs to be educated in the difference between what they may think is a green product
Mm-hmm.
versus what is a revolutionary, innovative technology that is radically different, right? And again, coming at a price points that very comparative, right? Where we bring in budgets that are within 99% of current budgets and bring all this value add. So it's not about the money, it's about the education. And
Yeah.
for us to communicate that to individuals, why we point our interest in our energies into the larger footprints is because they make a big difference. We have clients that are saving 8,000 trees a year. I mean, these are forests, right, that are being
Yeah.
saved, right?
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
mean, these are real material differences. And as
Yeah.
we work in that marketplace, we need to educate those decisions. Those 92% don't, believe so much in how
Mm-hmm.
they can make a difference, but that's our job. Our job is to make them believe when they see the difference, and
So,
that's the education.
and I love that. I want to just dive a little deeper into this because I think this is so fascinating because it's such an important part of your business to change people's behavior. You mentioned like, yeah, we got the tree huggers. You're preaching to the choir with them because, yeah, hey, like we know what we need to do. We need to protect the environment. We're gonna seek out businesses that actually are more sustainable, that are not greenwashing and so forth. The 92 other percenters that we talk about, a lot of them are just going through life because they have to go through life and they're just going with whatever product is in front of them. That's sort of the status quo kind of thing. What is the what sounds what you're saying here is like you present them with tangible measurements of numbers of, say, trees that you're saving, or of like areas you're saving. Is that what actually works? Is like you presenting, like, by buying these products, if you buy this amount of, say, paper towels and utensils and toilet paper and so forth, you are saving 8,000 trees. Does that come in with an order? Is that like those facts? Is that's what's changing their mind or making me like, hey, this could go into a shareholder newsletter, or we can use this to tell our staff and sort of our customers overall that this is what we use. Is it those numbers that are actually working?
Well, there's two things. First, I gave you a stat of the last decade of the changes on those percentages. What
Yeah.
we are predicting over the next 10 years, that we're going to see those decision makers, because it's a younger decision making demographic. We think that's going to triple, right? And they don't necessarily have to be tree huggers, but they're going to be very, very concerned about what their future is for younger folks and their grandchildren and children and so on. So we see that stat changing dramatically. The second part of that is, yes, numbers do make a difference, right? And we all know that. And part of the algorithms that we built into our system, which took many years and quite a bit of investment, um, really demonstrates clear and concisely to these decision makers and these companies. And we got cruise lines, hotels, and major financial institutions across the country. Those numbers do make a difference. They
Yeah.
are they hit home when someone recognizes. And when we do make our presentations, we do give them hypotheticals on their impact reports, because we go in as consultants. We actually analyze their footprints, analyze their consumption, analyze the materials they're currently using. So when you add it all up, they get an environmental impact report. Who's going to say no to saving 8,000 trees, right?
100%.
And don't get me wrong, there are a few that do, but
Yeah.
when we get those presentations, we're awarded the business 80% of the time. So it's interesting. But again, there's an old saying, and those are the listeners that may remember this. There was a great saying back in the 70s and 80s that an educated consumer is our best customer.
Yeah.
And I tend to tell my folks, make sure you understand that is a fact. The more you educate a customer, the more they're going to recognize the difference between what you're providing versus everything else.
I love it. I just think I completely agree with you. I think it's a fantastic, thought process when you go through. Like, do you have a team like in your marketing department that's just, there to get the latest measurements, understand the product better, provide that communication, the podcast, the newsletters, all that information, that, making sure the presentations are up to date? Do you have like a team? Like, do you have scientists on there too, like to talk about this? Like, where's the information coming from?
Well, you named about 5 different parts of our business, right?
Yeah,
Which is
I think
cool.
so.
Okay. And thank God I don't have to wear all those hats, right? But when it comes to marketing communications, I think we have the best team in the business. Not because I'm saying that.
Right.
It's because they are the most educated in a technology that is rather new, and
Right.
they have a great way of communicating that and bringing it back down to layman's terms. Because to answer your second part is, do we have scientists? Well, we do R&D every day.
Right.
There is a lot to what it is we've done over the last 10 to 20 years, right? Evolving from single products to 370. That means we need to understand every part of the makeup of the material. So we own all the formulations.
Yeah.
Based on all the R&D, and we're continuing to do R&D. We're going to be rolling out some very interesting packaging material for consumer packaging for major brands that
Nice.
are very much looking to advance their image with their packaging along with their actual product. So a
Unreal.
natural product,
Yeah.
chemical-free product. Our new material is going to be all of that. So they're going to have highly compostable materials made from tree-free materials. So it's interesting. We're constantly evolving. So it's a
I
fun
love
business
that.
to be in.
I love that. Now, let me ask you this. I live in Canada. Is there any way that your products make it up to Canada, or is it just right now in the U.S.?
There may be products finding its way into the Canadian market. I don't know. We do have some distribution in all parts of the country. So
Okay.
in that case, they may go, but we're always looking to our neighbors north, to our
Yeah,
neighbors south. We love you all, and at the end of the day, this is a global expedition, right?
for
This is
sure.
something where if we can change the minds of the consumers, they will change the minds of these legacy players, who, in my mind, I is one of my goals to get
Yeah.
these legacy players to adjust, because we're never going to be as big as them.
Right.
But if we can get the consumers to change their minds, they'll get these big legacy players to do what we're doing. They have the
Absolutely.
capabilities. They
Yeah.
just don't have the urge to do it yet, but they will.
Yeah, and it's their consumers that will provide them with that urge. You vote with your wallet a lot of the times, and I think that's really important. On the Canadian front, I think the biggest difference is you just have to have packaging in French and English, and once you're there, you can come north. So please consider that. If you need help, let me know. But I think that's something that's really important. Ralph, this has been amazing for you to drop by and let us know about the products. You have paper towels, plates, napkins, toilet papers, bowls, like coffee cups, like other cups, like even ice cream cups, like you get out of, I think Kleenex. everything, like tissues, everything. It's all zero waste, tree free, compostable, and plastic free. I love what you're doing, not only for your company, but also for the planet. And I want to thank you for continuing to drive this market and continue to change it, because we know it's not easy. And we know it's, sometimes probably like beating yourself up about it, try and get more and more, especially when you talk about some of these legacy companies changing their minds. And I urge you to continue to do what you do. We will help you in any way possible, and love to have you back on to talk more about any new products that you're coming on or anything new you want to talk about. Please let us know. We'd love to have you back on, and thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you, Andrew. And I encourage you to keep your audience very, very educated on what's going on out there and the new things that are there, because you're absolutely right. They change the minds of the legacy players every time they buy something different.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ralph. Really appreciate it.
Great seeing you.
Thank you, Ralph, for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I love what you have been doing for the last nearly 4 decades and are going to be doing well into the future. You have a great team surrounding you. You have a great team that's communicating a lot of great things about the products and why it's important to have these products. You have a podcast, which we will link down in the show notes, and you'll see throughout this intro and outro, you'll probably see the footage of the types of products that they have and the environment that they live in. It's always great. If you are listening to this and you are a C-level suite person who can make decisions on buying products for your corporation that are sustainable, I highly recommend that you go over to Emerald Ecovations, give them a call, get in contact, and let them change your corporation's world. I think it's really great to be able to do that. So I think companies like this is what we need to talk about more, because they're changing the world. And I really appreciate them for doing that. So thank you, Ralph, for joining us. I want to thank you for listening to us. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, please let me know in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, whatever that might be, please get in touch with me through 2 ways. You can go to Instagram and DM me on @HowToProtectTheOcean. That's @HowToProtectTheOcean. Or you can go to speakupforblue.com/contact, fill out the form, and go straight to my personal email. Other than that, I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode and all the other episodes that you've listened to. Don't forget to subscribe and share these episodes with people that you love and you want to see change in a beautiful world, that we can have sustainable products at scale. I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin from the True North, Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.